Solo Leveling, my first and super favorite manhwa, and according to hardcore manhwa readers, till now is the best power fantasy manhwa. Its main protagonist Sang Jinwoo, who is literally the strongest hunter in this world and also the current king of death. But not long ago he was like this crazy strong. In reality he was exactly opposite of his current version or form, whatever you say. He was called by the nickname the weakest hunter of all mankind. Even though he was a hunter, his physical capabilities were not at all like them. He was so weak that he had to fight with his life on the line, even in the lowest tier dungeons. So how he became the strongest being of the world, even though hunters can't level up or get any stronger compared to when they first awoke as a hunter and got powers. There are some methods for hunters to get stronger, but they can't make someone a literal god. So once again, how he became the strongest being of the world and why he is the only one who can level up. It's literally an out of the world story. So take some snacks, keep calm and listen to me. Hello everyone, I'm host PG and you are watching Banga. So the story begins in another world. At a time when nothing else existed, there was light and darkness. The absolute being, the god, split the light to create the messengers of God and split the darkness to create the 8 monarchs. The monarchs were born to destroy the world and the messengers who were born to maintain it killed each other's soldiers to no end. After ages being exhausted by the never-ending war, the greatest fragment of brilliant light, the strongest, wisest and also the favorite messenger of God Asborn asked the absolute being, "Why have you not helped your faithful subjects? Can't you hear the screams of the countless soldiers who have died in your honor? Please lend us the strength to eradicate our foes. We shall behead them and offer you their heads as tribute." But the absolute being didn't respond at all. That's when the greatest fragment and the other fragments of brilliant light realized that their battle against the monarchs was nothing but a source of entertainment for the absolute being, and that the absolute being didn't want the war to the end. So simply the war will never end as long as the absolute being lives. The fragments of brilliant light drew their swords to put an end to the meaningless battle, except for Asborn. Being loyal to his master, he was the only messenger of God who stood up against the rebels. But he and his army were no match for the allied messengers' army. He thought the end had finally come for him. But when he opened his eyes in the darkness, he realized the absolute being had hidden a power within him. The power to rule over death and governs the deepest depth of darkness. Using his new power, he came back from death and led his army of undead into battle. However, by the time he returned, everything was already over. The fragments of brilliant light had already killed the absolute being. After assuming the position of gods, they became the new rulers and began to attack the monarchs using devices that contained the absolute being's power. Lakey, the king of giants, the monarch of beginning, was captured as a result and the balance of power collapsed. That's when the monarchs realized the gravity of the situation. In anger, Asborn seized the chance to reach out the monarchs. In order to face off against the rulers, they also had no chance but to join forces with him. From then on, he fought the lengthy battle alongside the monarchs, not as a fragment of brilliant light or as a messenger of God, but as the 9th monarch, the monarch of shadows. Time was on his side. The corpses and soul left on the battlefield became his army. When he came to stand shoulder to shoulder with the army of destruction led by the king of berserk dragons, Antares, the rulers as well as the monarchs came to fear him. Eventually, 2 of the monarchs, the monarch of fangs and the monarch of white flames, joined their hands to bring him down. His army was nearly annihilated, but he defeated the both monarchs. His excessive power had brought about betrayal. While the monarch of fangs abandoned his troops and ran away, Baron, the monarch of white flames, the king of demons, paid the price. And then the rulers had appeared in front of him, but not as enemies, as fellow fragments who were born of the same mold. Although they were capable of sending him to the nothingness, they wished to make peace with him. But he was so angry at them, he refused their proposal. The rulers knelt down to him and asked to let go his anger. It was their way of showing respect to a fellow fragment who had once led the army of brilliant light on the front lines. All these sudden things made him confused and he couldn't come up with a single solution. So he decided to go into hiding in order to plan his revenge. Since he had confined the monarch of white flames within his shadows, he planned to attack the monarch of Fang's army after letting his body recover. But while he was in hiding, the monarchs who had lost an enormous amount of combat power were defeated by the rulers. When he reappeared in front of the monarchs who had escaped to a gap junction between dimensions, the Dragon King's strongest monarch, the Monarch of Destruction, knew it was time for them to get combat power as much as possible. So he gladly offered Asbon to join them again, even though the monarchs had betrayed him before. Asbon's heart is still filled with anger for the rulers, so he accepted the offer, and then the monarchs picked out a world where they could build a new army out of rulers' sight, and it was obviously Earth. The arrival of monarchs must have been unprecedented to mankind. Their annihilation was inevitable. The rulers sent their soldiers after finally tracking them down on Earth, but everything had already come to an end by then. The monarchs had already taken over Earth and made it a living hell. Every earthly creature had died. The rulers were furious at the fact that the denizens of chaos they had failed to catch had destroyed another world, and in order to set things right, they used a forbidden device containing the absolute being's power. It was Cup of Reincarnation, an instrument of God. The cup was a remarkable object that could turn time by approximately 10 years. The rulers did everything they could do to save this world, but Earth was too much weak to fight against the monarchs. A world without monarch couldn't stand such gargantuan battles. It wouldn't have mattered whether the monarchs or the rulers own. Earth would have been ravaged regardless. The rulers knew they couldn't save everyone, so ultimately they decided to salvage at least a portion of population so that life on Earth could continue. They created beings who are now called hunters, who could survive the collision of two great forces and strengthen Earth as well by scattering mana, by killing monsters and magic beasts by hunters' hand. That's how desperately the rulers wanted to protect mankind. Although Harbings can go against the flow of time, they are able to retain their powers and memories. The monarchs tirelessly refined their plans, and on time, they borrowed the bodies of humans to descend upon Earth and to brought their army much sooner than the rulers had expected. But to monarchs, Monarch of Destruction and Shadows, they possess enormous amount of power, and to cross over into Earth, they need a human vessel that could handle such power. Because of their enormous power, they couldn't find a host. That's when a skilled mage working under one of the monarchs came to Asbon with a proposal. He offered to create Asbon a suitable host, and in return the mage called. The architect asked for immortality. The architect designed a system like modern video game to prepare a perfect vessel, and that's when Asbon noticed a human who had stepped beyond the boundaries of life, yet always managed to escape with his life. The human was obviously weak, Sang Jin-Woo. He was weak, but Asbon chose him because he experienced death from much closer than anyone else. The system that was built using Asbon's power gradually changed Jin-Woo's body to adapt his powers, and that's why Jin-Woo was able to level up and got stronger eventually time by time. After some time, when Jin-Woo became a perfect vessel for Asbon, he doesn't take over his body because spending time with Jin-Woo brought him happiness. And in chapter 161, where Jin-Woo died fighting against the monarchs, he finally made the real monarch of shadows, Asbon, face to face in his domain of death, where he told Jin-Woo the entire story of monarchs and rulers. And in the end, being tired by all this shit, he gave Jin-Woo all his powers and gone to rest in eternal peace. And Jin-Woo once again came back from death. So that's how Jin-Woo, the weakest hunter of all mankind, became the strongest hunter of the world and also the current king of death. I think you all get your answers. If you get and like my work, then please do subscribe, give a like and also a comment. If you haven't watched my previous videos, then go for it. So that's for today. আবারও দেখা হচ্ছে পরের ভিডিওতে।